Every time you chase someone who isn't valuing you, you lower your worth in their eyes and in your own. It's an unspoken truth that people respect what they have to work for and disregard what comes to them too easily. When you continue to reach out to someone who has already pulled away, you reinforce a dynamic where they hold the power, and you become someone they take for granted. They don't have to put in any effort because they know without a doubt that you will always be there. That certainty breeds indifference. The more you try to be noticed, the more invisible you become. The moment you text them again after they've ignored you, you teach them that you will tolerate their inconsistency. You show them that you are willing to accept crumbs of attention instead of a full plate of respect. And once they realize that they can come and go as they please without losing you, they stop valuing you altogether. You become an option rather than a priority, someone they keep around out of convenience rather than genuine care. That's why self-respect must come before desperation. The way you treat yourself sets the standard for how others will treat you. If you don't respect your own time, energy, and dignity, how can you expect anyone else to? When you choose to text someone who is showing you with their actions that they are not interested, you are essentially betraying yourself. You are ignoring your own intuition, that gut feeling telling you that something is off. You are placing their validation above your own self-worth. And what do you gain from it? Maybe a short-lived response, a few words that temporarily soothe your anxiety, but deep down you know the truth. If someone genuinely wanted to talk to you, you wouldn't have to keep initiating the conversation. You wouldn't have to remind them that you exist. People value what they have to work for. This is a fundamental truth in every area of life. The things we invest time and effort into are the things we cherish the most. Think about it. When you buy something expensive, something you've saved up for, you treat it with care. You protect it. You appreciate it. But when something is handed to you without effort, it's easy to take it for granted. The same psychology applies to relationships. If you make yourself too available, too eager, too willing to chase after someone who isn't matching your energy, they will see you as replaceable. They won't respect your time because you haven't set any boundaries around it. There is a certain energy that radiates from people who respect themselves. They don't chase, they attract. They don't beg for attention, they command it through their presence. They don't settle for breadcrumbs. They demand the full meal. And that kind of confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who carry themselves with a sense of self-worth, who don't need external validation to feel whole. When you stop chasing, when you refuse to text first after being ignored, you send a powerful message, not just to them, but to yourself. You affirm that you are valuable, that your time is precious, that you deserve to be with people who appreciate you. But it's not just about them, it's about what chasing does to you internally. When you continuously pursue someone who isn't reciprocating, you start to feel inadequate. You start questioning what you did wrong, what you could do better, what you need to change to make them like you. You overanalyze every interaction, replaying conversations in your mind, looking for signs of hope. And in doing so, you lose sight of yourself. You become fixated on winning their approval instead of focusing on your own growth. Chasing also creates a toxic cycle. The more you reach out and get ignored or receive lukewarm responses, the more desperate you become. And desperation is the fastest way to lose someone's respect. People can sense neediness. They can feel when someone is seeking validation rather than genuinely connecting, and when they sense that, they pull away even more. They feel suffocated, like they are being forced into a role they never signed up for. And the harder you try, the less they want to engage. It's a painful cycle, one that only stops when you make the decision to walk away. And here's the hard truth. When someone ignores you, they are making a choice. They are choosing not to engage, not to prioritize you, not to reciprocate the effort you are putting in. That choice should be enough for you to stop. It should be enough for you to recognize that you deserve better. But instead, most people keep holding on, hoping that if they just try one more time, things will be different. That maybe if they word the text differently, if they wait a little longer, if they show how much they care, the other person will finally wake up and realize their worth. But that rarely happens. In most cases, the more you try to prove your worth to someone, the less they see it. There is nothing wrong with caring about someone. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be close to someone. But there is something deeply wrong with sacrificing your self-respect to gain their attention. There is something damaging about lowering your standards just to keep a connection alive. A relationship, whether romantic, friendship, or otherwise, should never be one-sided. It should never make you feel like you have to fight for a place in someone's life. If you have to convince someone to care, they don't truly care. And this is where the real shift happens, when you stop trying. When you make the conscious decision to no longer text, to no longer check their social media, to no longer analyze their responses, something changes. The power dynamic shifts. Suddenly, they start to wonder why you've gone silent. They start to notice your absence. And even if they don't, even if they never reach out again, that's the clarity you needed. That's the proof that they were never truly invested. But more importantly, when you stop chasing, you regain your peace. You free yourself from the emotional turmoil of waiting, of overthinking, of feeling like you're not enough. You start focusing on yourself, on your own goals, on the things that actually add value to your life. And that's when you become truly powerful. That's when you realize that self-respect is worth more than any fleeting attention. Because in the end, the person who values themselves always wins. If someone truly cares, you won't have to remind them of your existence. You won't have to send that extra text, make that extra call, or force a conversation just to feel acknowledged. The need to chase, to constantly seek a response, is a sign that the energy is not being reciprocated. And when energy is not reciprocated, it means that the connection is one-sided, out of balance, and ultimately not meant for you. People who genuinely care about you, who truly value your presence, will make sure you feel seen and heard. They won't let the conversation die out because they enjoy speaking to you. They won't leave your messages on read for days, knowing that you're waiting for a response. They won't make you feel like you have to prove your worth just to get a fraction of their attention. When someone is invested in you, their actions reflect it effortlessly. They won't need constant reminders to check in, to communicate, to show appreciation. It will come naturally because that's what people do when they value someone. But the problem is that too many people refuse to accept this reality. They create excuses, justifications, and illusions in their minds to avoid the painful truth that someone simply isn't as invested as they are. They say, maybe they're just busy, or maybe you're not good at texting, or maybe they just don't realize how much I care. But deep down, they know the truth, because when you matter to someone, they make time. When they value you, they remember you. No one is too busy for someone they truly care about. And yet many people continue to chase. They continue to reach out, thinking that if they just say the right thing, if they just show enough effort, the other person will suddenly wake up and realize their worth. But relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, are never meant to be built on force. When one person is always initiating, always trying to keep things alive, while the other person barely puts in any effort, it creates a dynamic where one side is constantly giving, while the other is simply receiving without appreciation. That imbalance leads to emotional exhaustion, frustration, and a deep sense of unworthiness. The truth is, when you stop chasing, you see things clearly. You start to recognize who actually values you and who is simply tolerating your presence. You stop holding on to people who have already let go of you, and you begin to invest in those who genuinely appreciate you. This is where the shift happens. When you stop forcing connections and start letting energy flow naturally. When you pull back, something interesting happens. You begin to see who actually reaches out, who checks in, who notices your absence. If someone truly cares about you, they won't let too much time pass without acknowledging your presence. They won't need you to remind them that you exist because they already know your worth. They already value the bond you share and they don't want to lose it. But if they don't reach out, if they don't notice your absence, then you have your answer. You were never as important to them as they were to you. And that realization, while painful at first, is ultimately freeing. It allows you to stop investing in people who do not see your value. It gives you the space to redirect your energy toward those who genuinely appreciate you. Too often, people get caught in the trap of believing that they need to prove their worth to others. They think that if they just try harder, if they just show more effort, they will finally receive the love, attention, or recognition they crave. But worth is not something you prove. It is something you own. And the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop seeking validation from those who are indifferent, you begin to recognize your own value. This is where self-respect comes into play. You must reach a point where you refuse to beg for someone's attention, where you understand that your energy is precious and it should only be given to those who genuinely reciprocate it. When you let go of the need to chase, you create space for better connections, healthier relationships, and a stronger sense of self. What many fail to realize is that when you chase after someone who is not reciprocating, you are actually pushing them further away. People don't value what is always available. They are drawn to what is scarce, to what carries weight, to what demands respect. When you are too eager, too persistent, you send a message that your presence is not valuable enough to be sought after. You become an afterthought rather than a priority. But the moment you step back, the moment you reclaim your energy and stop initiating, you shift the entire dynamic. You remove the power from their hands and place it back into your own. You force them to make a decision to either step up and reciprocate or to fade away, and whichever path they choose, you win. Because if they step up, it means they truly care. And if they disappear, it means they were never meant to be in your life in the first place. It takes strength to stop chasing. It takes courage to accept that some people will never care as much as you do. But the alternative, constantly running after people who don't value you, will only leave you drained, disappointed, and unfulfilled. The moment you choose to walk away from one-sided connections is the moment you begin to attract the relationships you truly deserve. The moment you send that message, you are handing over your power. You are giving control of your emotions to someone who may not even be thinking about you. You are allowing their response or lack of response to dictate your mood, your confidence, your self-worth. And for what? A fleeting moment of validation? A temporary sense of relief? The truth is, every time you reach out to someone who has already shown you that they don't value your presence, you are reinforcing your own feelings of unworthiness. You are teaching yourself that your peace, your dignity, your energy are all secondary to the hope of receiving attention from someone who isn't fully invested. People respect those who respect themselves. When you continue to reach out to someone who has chosen to pull away, you are signaling that you don't respect your own boundaries. You are showing them that no matter how little effort they put in, you will always be there, waiting, hoping, willing to accept whatever scraps of attention they decide to throw your way. And once someone realizes that you don't respect your own worth, they stop respecting you too. They see you as someone who will always be available, always chasing, always willing to compromise your self-respect just for a response. But the problem goes deeper than just their lack of interest. It's about the way you begin to view yourself. When you keep pursuing someone who isn't reciprocating, you start believing that you are not enough as you are. You start thinking that if only you were funnier, more attractive, more interesting, then maybe they would finally notice you. Maybe they would finally care. And so you start changing yourself, adjusting your personality, suppressing your true thoughts, all in an attempt to be more appealing to them. But what you fail to realize is that the right people never need to be convinced. The right people will see your value without you having to prove anything. Every time you send that unnecessary text, you are delaying your own healing. You are keeping yourself stuck in a cycle of emotional dependency, constantly looking for external validation instead of finding it within yourself. And what happens when they don't respond the way you want? What happens when they take hours or days to reply, only to send you a half-hearted message that lacks warmth or enthusiasm? You feel worse than before. You feel foolish for reaching out. You regret it. And yet, because you have attached your sense of self-worth to their validation, you find yourself doing it again and again, hoping for a different outcome, but always ending up with the same disappointment. It's a form of self-betrayal. Every time you ignore your intuition, the part of you that knows deep down that this person doesn't truly care, you are betraying yourself. You are choosing temporary relief over long-term peace. You are choosing to prioritize their attention over your own well-being. And the worst part is, you know you deserve better, but something inside you is still holding on, still waiting for them to change, still hoping that one more text, one more effort will finally make them see your worth. But that's not how real connections work. Real connections don't require convincing. They don't require constant effort just to be acknowledged. And here's what happens when you finally stop. When you finally resist the urge to send that message, when you finally choose silence over chasing, you create space for clarity. You begin to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. You start recognizing that their lack of effort was never a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their own priorities. You start realizing that you were holding on to an illusion, to a version of them that only existed in your mind. And as painful as that realization is, it is also liberating. Because the moment you stop trying to force someone to care is the moment you set yourself free. When you no longer reach out, when you no longer try to reignite something that has already burned out, you regain control over your emotions. You stop allowing someone else's inconsistency to dictate your happiness. You stop waiting by your phone, checking to see if they've replied, analyzing their words for hidden meanings, hoping for some sign that they still care. You start redirecting that energy back into yourself, into your goals, your passions, your personal growth. And that is when you truly start to heal. The reality is, people can sense desperation. They can feel when someone is seeking validation rather than engaging from a place of confidence, and that energy pushes them away. No one wants to feel like they are someone else's emotional lifeline. No one wants to feel like they are responsible for another person's happiness. That's why the more you chase, the less they care. The more you try to force a response, the less they feel inclined to give it. Because the moment they sense that their attention has become a source of control over you, they lose respect for you. But when you stop, when you finally choose yourself over the need to be noticed, everything changes. You no longer feel the need to beg for attention because you realize that the right people will never make you beg. You no longer waste time overanalyzing the behavior because you understand that real connections are effortless. And most importantly, you no longer define your worth by someone else's willingness to reply to a message. That is a shift that changes everything. The moment you decide that your peace is more important than their attention, you take back your power. You start attracting people who genuinely appreciate you, not because you chased them, but because your self-respect makes you naturally magnetic. The less you seek validation, the more you realize that you never needed it in the first place. When you keep reaching out to someone who has already pulled away, you are doing more than just seeking attention. You are teaching them how to treat you. You are showing them that they can ignore you, dismiss you, and still have access to you whenever they please. This is where the real issue lies. Not in their lack of response, but in your willingness to keep giving them chances despite their indifference. People learn how to treat you based on what you tolerate. If you continue to engage with someone who does not prioritize you, you are silently communicating that their behavior is acceptable, that their absence does not have consequences, and that you will always be there no matter how they treat you. Respect is not demanded, it is inspired. It is earned through your actions, your self-worth, and the boundaries you set. If you respect yourself, others will have no choice but to respect you too. But when you repeatedly allow someone to come and go as they please, to treat you like an afterthought, you are showing them that they can have you without making any effort. And people do not value what is freely given without cost. They value what they must earn. When someone knows they can ignore your texts, disappear for days, and come back whenever they feel like it, they stop seeing you as someone important. You become an option, not a priority. They see you as someone they can entertain when they are bored, not someone they need to make time for. And the reason they continue to treat you this way is that you have allowed it. You have made it easy for them to take you for granted. What many people fail to realize is that the power dynamic in any relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, is not controlled by the person who chases, but by the person who is being chased. The one who constantly initiates, who constantly seeks attention, who constantly tries to maintain the connection, is always at a disadvantage. They are the ones putting in all the effort, while the other person simply receives without reciprocation. This imbalance creates a dynamic where one person is valued less because they are too available, too eager, too willing to accept breadcrumbs of attention rather than demanding full respect. But the moment you stop, the moment you choose to no longer tolerate half-hearted efforts, you shift that power back into your hands. You force the other person to make a choice. Either they step up and match your energy, or they fade away completely. And either way, you win. Because if they choose to step up, it means they recognize your value. But if they don't, it means they were never truly invested in the first place. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can stop wasting time on people who do not deserve you. There is a fundamental truth that too many people overlook. People respect those who walk away when they are not treated right. They admire those who have the strength to say, "I deserve better," and actually mean it. When you finally decide that you will no longer accept being treated as an afterthought, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that your time and energy are valuable, that you are not someone who will settle for less than they deserve. And here's where the real transformation happens. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you start attracting people who actually appreciate you. You begin to surround yourself with those who value your presence, not just your availability. You develop an energy that commands respect because people can feel when someone values themselves. Confidence is magnetic. Self-respect is attractive. When you know your worth, you no longer have to prove it to anyone. They just recognize it. But you can't reach that point if you keep allowing yourself to be an option. If you keep waiting for someone who only gives you the bare minimum, if you keep accepting apologies without changed behavior, if you keep chasing people who are not chasing you, you will never experience the level of respect you deserve. Some people think that being persistent will change things, that if they just keep showing how much they care, the other person will finally wake up and appreciate them. But real respect does not come from persistence, it comes from absence. From walking away when you are not valued. From refusing to participate in a dynamic that drains you. Think about this. When someone knows that losing you is a real possibility, they will either step up or step out. But if they believe that no matter what they do, you will always be there, they have no reason to change. No reason to respect you. No reason to make an effort. Your time, your energy, your love. These are not things that should be given away freely to those who do not appreciate them. They are privileges that should be earned by those who show up, who make an effort, who respect and value you. If someone is not willing to put in the effort, then they do not deserve access to you. This is why silence is so powerful, because it forces people to decide what they truly want. It shows them that you are not someone who will beg for attention, who will settle for being ignored, who will continue reaching out when they have already pulled away. It teaches them that you have boundaries, and those boundaries demand respect. And here's the irony. When you finally stop tolerating mistreatment, when you finally choose yourself over their inconsistency, that's when people start noticing. That's when they realize they took you for granted. That's when they start wondering why you're no longer reaching out, why you're no longer available, why you are no longer giving them your time and energy. Because people only appreciate what they can no longer have. But by then, it won't matter, because you will have already moved on, already elevated yourself to a new level of self-respect, already shifted your energy towards people and situations that truly align with your worth. And that is where true power lies, not in seeking validation from others, but in recognizing that you never needed it to begin with. The moment you decide to stop reaching out, a shift happens. Not just in your external world, but within you. It's not just about ignoring someone who has ignored you. It's about reclaiming the power you unknowingly gave away. Every text you sent, every time you reached out first, every time you waited anxiously for a reply that never came or came too late with little enthusiasm, you were chipping away at your own self-worth. It might not have felt that way at the time, because in the moment sending that message gave you hope. It made you feel like you were doing something instead of just waiting in silence. But what you were actually doing was reinforcing a belief that you had to fight for someone's attention, that you had to prove your value, that you had to remind them of your presence. When you stop, the silence feels deafening at first. You feel the discomfort of not knowing what's happening on the other side. Is this person thinking about you? Do they even care that you've gone silent? Will they ever reach out again? These questions flood your mind, and this is where most people break. They convince themselves that just one more text won't hurt, that maybe there was a misunderstanding, that maybe the other person is just waiting for a sign that you still care. And so they send another message. They initiate another conversation. They open a door that was already closing, only to find that nothing has changed. The response, if there even is one, is just as lackluster, just as distant, just as dismissive as before. And then they are back in the same cycle of wondering why they weren't met with the enthusiasm, the effort, the reciprocity they were hoping for. But if you resist that urge, if you sit with the discomfort instead of trying to escape it, something powerful happens. You start to realize that you don't actually need their response to feel complete. You don't need their validation to confirm your worth. You don't need them to acknowledge you to prove that you matter. The very act of not reaching out forces you to confront something deeper. The fact that your sense of value should never be tied to someone else's attention in the first place. This is where real transformation begins. At first, the silence may feel like rejection, but in reality, it is redirection. It is the universe, life, or whatever force you believe in showing you that this person was not meant to hold space in your life. That their lack of effort was not an invitation for you to try harder, but rather a sign that you were knocking on the wrong door. And when you finally accept that, when you finally let go of the need for them to notice your absence, you start experiencing a new kind of peace. The most interesting thing about human psychology is that people are wired to notice what is no longer easily accessible. When something is always available, it blends into the background, taken for granted, assumed to always be there. But the moment it is removed, the moment it is no longer within reach, it creates a void, one that people subconsciously begin to notice. This is why, more often than not, the very people who ignored you before suddenly start showing interest when you go silent. When you stop texting, when you stop reaching out, when you stop making yourself available, they begin to wonder. They begin to notice. They begin to question why the energy they once expected from you is no longer there. And this shift in dynamic is not about manipulation. It's about reality. People naturally respect what they feel they might lose. But here is the key difference. When you truly embrace silence, when you truly step back, not to get a reaction, but to protect your peace, you no longer care if they notice. You no longer crave their response. You no longer seek their validation, because by then you have already healed enough to understand that someone's attention should never be something you have to chase. This is where your energy starts to change. This is when people begin to see you differently. Not as someone desperate for attention, but as someone with self-respect, someone who knows their worth, someone who is focused on their own growth rather than waiting for others to acknowledge them. And ironically, this is when you become most attractive. Not just in a romantic sense, but in all aspects of life. Because people are drawn to confidence. They are drawn to those who don't need constant reassurance, to those who are secure enough in themselves that they don't need to beg for attention. And the real beauty of this transformation, the moment you reach a point where you genuinely no longer care whether they notice or not, that is when you have won. That is when you have truly detached. Because now their attention, or lack thereof, has no effect on your peace. You no longer lose sleep wondering why they haven't texted. You no longer overanalyze their messages, trying to read between the lines for some hidden meaning. You no longer base your self-worth on whether or not they choose to engage with you. Instead, you start investing that energy into yourself. You start focusing on your own life, your own happiness, your own goals. And as you do, you realize just how much energy you were wasting on someone who was never giving you the same in return. You see how much power you were giving away, how much control you had surrendered over your own emotions. And once you take that power back, you never want to give it away again. There is a reason why the most confident, self-assured people do not chase, they attract. They do not beg for attention. They command respect. And this is not because they're playing games or trying to manipulate situations. It is because they genuinely understand their own worth. They know that they do not need to convince anyone to see their value. They do not need to constantly prove that they are worth someone's time. They simply exist in their truth. And the right people recognize it without needing to be reminded. This is why not texting again is more than just a strategy. It's a mindset shift. It's a declaration that you will no longer waste energy on those who do not prioritize you. It's a decision to stop chasing what is not meant for you. It's a realization that your worth is not measured by how much effort you put into getting someone's attention, but by how much self-respect you have to walk away when that effort is not reciprocated. When you finally stop reaching out, when you finally decide to step back and let go, something unexpected happens. You begin to rediscover yourself. You start to see all the energy you once poured into someone else, energy that was wasted on unanswered messages and half-hearted responses. And you realize just how much of yourself you were giving away. And that realization can be both painful and liberating. Painful because you recognize how much time you spent waiting, hoping, and seeking validation from someone who never truly valued your presence. But liberating because for the first time in a long time, you see that you never actually needed them. You just needed to redirect that energy back into yourself. At first, you may feel restless. The silence may feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable even, because for so long you were in a habit of reaching out, of checking your phone, of waiting for a response that might never come. But as the days pass, as you start investing in yourself instead of chasing someone else, you begin to notice something incredible. You feel lighter. The weight of expectation, of anxiety, of waiting for their attention starts to lift. You wake up in the morning and instead of wondering if they've texted, you think about your own goals, your own plans, your own desires. This is where the shift happens. When you stop texting, when you stop waiting for their attention, you start reclaiming your own power. You begin to see just how much you were giving away, your peace, your self-worth, your confidence, all in exchange for crumbs of attention. And when you truly understand that, you realize that no one else was responsible for how you felt but you. You were the one who kept reaching out. You were the one who kept hoping. You were the one who allowed their inconsistent behavior to affect your emotions. But now you are taking control. And something else starts to happen. The more you focus on yourself, the more your energy changes. You no longer carry the weight of disappointment, the frustration of waiting, the insecurity of feeling like you weren't enough. Instead, you start feeling empowered, self-assured, grounded in your own worth. And people notice, not just the one you stopped texting, but everyone around you. Because confidence, independence, and self-respect are magnetic. They draw people in. They make others take notice. And often, this is when the person who once ignored you, who once took you for granted, starts to wonder, starts to notice your absence, starts to question why you are no longer reaching out. Because people are naturally drawn to what they can no longer have easy access to. When you were always available, they had no reason to value you. But now that you are gone, now that your energy is no longer directed toward them, they start to feel the void. They start to wonder if they made a mistake. But by the time they realize it, you will have already moved forward. Because the truth is, the more time you spend away from someone who did not value you, the more you see them clearly. You no longer see them through the lens of your emotions, through the hope that maybe one day they would change. Instead, you see them exactly as they are. Someone who was never fully invested, someone who was content with giving you the bare minimum, someone who never matched the effort you gave. And with that clarity, you no longer want to go back. Because now you have learned something powerful. You were never meant to chase, to beg, to convince someone of your worth. You were meant to stand tall in your own self-respect, to walk away from anything that does not honor you, to invest in yourself instead of wasting time on people who don't deserve it. And as you do, As you continue to grow, you attract people who actually see your value without you having to prove it. People who show up, who reciprocate, who match your energy. This is what happens when you stop texting, when you stop chasing, when you stop pouring energy into people who are not pouring into you. You break free from the cycle of disappointment, from the habit of settling for less, from the need to seek validation from those who never deserved you in the first place. And in that space, in that silence, you find something far more valuable than any text message. You find yourself.